So, Willie Shaw, thank you so much for having Evanston Live TV in your home tonight. Thank you. I've been wanting to sit down with you for the longest.
Really?
Yes.
I'm easy to find. I don't know what took you so long.
I see you out and about. You are very active with NAACP.
Yes, I am.
And whenever I'm seeing you, like, well, I got this event coming up and I got this coming up, and then we could never, like, hook up.
Yes.
And I was like, this woman is busy.
Well,
So,
I'm so glad we did today.
yes. I was like, I'm going to track her down. I'm going to get her. I'm going to get her.
You got me.
I got you. So, thank you so much for your time tonight.
You're welcome.
So, NAACP. Now, a lot of people in Evanston, there's some people who know NAACP. Tell people exactly what is the NAACP.
The NAACP, first of all, has been around since 1909. You know, it is the oldest civil rights organization, and it is a civil rights organization. We want people to know that, first of all. You know, although Ida B. Wells was one of the founders, 4 of the other founders were white men and women, you know, and it was founded because of discrimination toward black people or African Americans, colored people, even at that time, we were called, but it was formed because of the lynching and rights of black people not being addressed. Once the NAACP started, the mission over the years has not changed drastically at all. The mission has always been to enhance education, health, economic development, voters registration. You know, in fact, we have what we call the 21st century game changers. And that is really the NAACP mission just put into single words. And those words are those areas that we focus on: criminal justice, education, voters registration, our civic engagement, health. Yeah. And so that has remained the same throughout from 1909 to currently.
Now, when I was growing up, it seemed like when I was younger, NAACP, the name itself carried so much weight, so much power. And if, you know, you said NAACP, it struck fear in some people, like, woo, you know, they call it the NAACP. So, you know.
Yes.
But now it's do you think things have changed? Because you're one of the few in the area who I see who is out there. You're getting engaged with the community, finding out what's going on with the black community. If people need the NAACP, you're letting people know we're here for you.
Absolutely.
And you've gone above, I've seen you, you've gone above and beyond. What do you think that is that people aren't really that familiar with? What some people don't even know NAACP is here.
Yes, and that is unfortunate. You know, it is still a premier, powerful organization. I believe what has happened is young people have not been told, you know, and I think it's generational, that anything that's of importance to people, to families, to individuals has to be passed down from one generation to the next. And unfortunately, I have to say that generations have not done that, you know, so we do, and that's why I get out there. We do talk to young adults, teenagers, high school, middle school students about the NAACP because they were not aware of it. I think because things in many cases improved so much for African Americans. You know, we've had when you've had different migration periods from the southern states, you know, people began to feel more and more that they were okay, you know, that they could find jobs, that they could find housing, you know. They felt that they were in better schools, you know. So at the needs, there go the kids, the needs were not that great. You know, now that that generation above those young adults, they are very aware of it. But I think the other unfortunate thing is that they pull that up because when they need it, you know, so they are aware that the NAACP is here. They are aware of what they do. They are aware of the kind of assistance they can get from them. And when there are issues, then they do come to us. That is one of the other committees that we have. We have a legal redress committee, you know, and we constantly get complaints, you know, from Evanston citizens. So they are very well aware that it exists, you know. But we want them to become active in what it does, you know, not to just come, you know, when something is wrong. And unfortunately, oftentimes is when people or a situation has reached a critical stage, you know, and then they come, you know. When you get into legalities, we find that one of the other things that I'm not sure that, well, we find anyway that most people, and we find this even nationally when we have a national meeting, that people don't understand about the NAACP is that we're not a legal entity, you know, but we do have an NAACP legal fund that's operated through the national organization. But local NAACP branches do not have that power. If there is an issue that a community member or citizen feels that's grave enough, then that complaint can still be filed with the local branch, and the local branch can then relay that information to the national organization. And if the national organization determines that that is an issue that is affecting communities nationwide, then they will take it up. You know, trying to think, maybe a good example would be the water issue in Flint, Michigan.
Okay.
You know, so say if there was an issue like that in Evanston, they would say on an individual basis, we would probably ask you to try to work that out locally. But because we have this going on nationally in Flint and over here and in this city, we can combine those complaints, and then the National Defense Fund legislatively would do something about it. You know, other small issues, and I don't mean small in light of what the citizens believe, but by NAACP bylaws, they really ask local branches to try to be a mediator, you know, and settle issues, you know. But we do have people that come and say, this happened, you know, can you take them to court? Well, we don't take people to court, you know. But the national office does if it's a major problem in the country.
Mediate. I mean, sometimes mediation does work, but sometimes there's just one side that's right and there's one side that's wrong.
Absolutely.
That's like,
Absolutely.
how do you mediate between, like, say, if Malcolm X was still here, Trump and Malcolm X? How do you mediate that? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah. There are times when you cannot, you know, but then it would go to the next level, you know. I think in most cases, I would say in the last 10, 15 years here in Evanston, and I'm only basing this on the complaints that we've gotten. You know, we have fortunately been able
To
to
mediate.
mediate them when people thought that we wouldn't be able to. You know, that's been a good thing. Is very powerful when you have two opposing groups that come in and and you know are very adamant about their position and not willing to give. You know, but we have some strategies. You know that we use. You know, and people often want to know what those are, what happened, or I know about this situation in Evanston and I don't think anything was done about it, you know. And all of this information is confidential, you know. So we can only say that we addressed a particular amount of complaints within a year's period. This amount of complaints were reached satisfactorily. You know, we cannot mention how, we cannot mention who, you know. So the public, when they see something like that, you know, oftentimes they assume nothing was done just because it was confidential. Yes.
What would you say are some of, well, you know, you have to keep things confidential, but what would you say have been some of the issues that you've heard over and over and over?
Unfortunately, the school system has been one. Both school systems, just this year. And
202 and
last
65.
year. Yeah, 65 and 202. Yeah, yeah. We've had our complaints filed with our legal redress committee. I believe we've had at least two with the city of Evanston, you know, that were resolved. You know, and those were the biggest ones. You know, there are few with housing, you know, that we're working on now. That's usually a big one.
Now, you said education is part of the NAACP, part of their work. Now, I know you gave, I've been hearing so much about the exhibit. I've gone to see it at the city, at the Civic Center on the second floor, the redlining.
Yes.
You and Dino Robinson and Devon Reed, you all got all this information together, and Pat Effiam
Yes.
is part of it
Yes.
too. And I mean, it was just so much information. Can you
Yes.
tell people more about I mean, it was so informative. Sad
Yes.
information.
Yes.
Very,
Yes.
very sad. But thank you. First of all, thank you for doing that work.
Yes. Thank you.
But was there anything in your research and putting that together that you were shocked by?
No, and the event, the Red Line event that I spoke at was really about my migration from Mississippi here and what I had come in contact with in the years that I've lived in Evanston. You know, now I probably came here for the first time at like 14 years old. You know, now I'm originally from Mississippi, segregated South, you know, and I thought Red was told everyone in the northern cities were doing great, you know, that's where you want to be, you know, and I believed it, you know, even older black people that lived here, you know, when they would come back, you know, they would brag about how, and I mean specifically Evanston, but northern cities, you know, was just great places to live, you know. So by the time I was about 16, I guess, I'd been coming the summer before, but then after that, I started coming every summer, uh, to work, and I guess my first experience was I lived at a sister that lived here, my oldest sister, at 1806 Lake Street, and lived on the second floor. And she knew Jimmy that operated Jimmy's Cleaners, that was one of the stable businesses in Evanston that had been black business that had been here for years. There was like 2 blocks down on Ashland and Lake. So he hired me there, as a cashier. But as time went on, each summer I came. Uh, then I worked at Clark Candy Company, for 3 or 4 summers after that. But the first time that I noticed the difference in housing and racism was the lady at 1806, white lady that owned the house, getting older and wanted to retire. She put the house on the market, and my sister decided she wanted to purchase it. Again, we were on the second floor, one way in, one way out, and she decided, my sister decided she would have the city come in, check it out, inspect it and everything. First thing they told her was that all these repairs she would have to get done, and there had to be 2 exits, and we said, she's lived here for years, there's only 1 exit. Then they talked about city ordinances. Well, long story short, with that, the lady sold the building. My sister did not buy it. Another white family bought it. To this day, it's still 1806 Lake Street, 1 entrance, 1 exit,
Wow.
second floor rented.
Wow.
Yes, yes, yes. So I believe by the time, I believe I was a sophomore in college that summer, getting ready to go into my junior year, I met a lady named Lillian Ward who had a restaurant. It was actually located where Heckey's is now. I don't remember who introduced me to her, but I got a job there working as a waitress. And so she became my mom away from home, great relationship. And then she moved to Green Bay and what is that, Simpson, where the Walgreens now is. Fannie Lazar owned that building that was there, and the next restaurant down where First Church is located, directly across the street from their parking lot. She owned both those buildings. Nothing had been done to either of those buildings for years. As soon as we were in there, every day, or at least 2 or 3 times a week, there were people from the city coming saying they were inspectors. And they would come in. Oh, the canopy has a hole in it, and you can't repair a canopy, so you need to take that down and put up a new one. They would come in and take the glasses, and they're turning the glasses around looking at them. Then they had this little glass instrument where they said they measured the bacteria, in the glasses, Or they would look around, there's a crack in the floor, you're going to have to replace this tile, and she just felt that they were trying to run her out of business, just constant complaints about everything that was going on in the restaurant, but we eventually kind of went into a partnership, she and I, together and we were able to get things done, then they would come in, sit, oh, we're not inspecting today, because we were like, weren't you just here last week? Oh, we just came in for a cup of coffee, looks like you guys are doing really well in here, how's business, and they're looking around, and the entire time we were there, which was several years, it was constant, constant,
Just harassment.
constant harassment. Yes, yes. And then I guess probably my next experience was, let me go back a minute, because one of the other things that happened when I mentioned that everybody talked about things being better, in the North, growing up in the segregated South had, oh, and I hope people don't get this wrong, but had some benefits to African Americans. For instance, they own hundreds of acres of land all over the South. Their homes weren't fabulous, but they owned their homes. We had great role models because of segregation, so we knew doctors, lawyers, teachers, administrators, because of segregation, everybody that you knew and came in contact was black. So moving to this area, when people said it was better, then I thought, I'm going to see a lot of black educators, a lot of black doctors, a lot of black lawyers, a lot of black homeowners, and I went around making it my business to find out where they were. Where do I go to eat? Where do I go to the cleaners? Where do I go to the store? And the homes, I'm like, these are buildings, these people that live there own the buildings. And, when I think back from a 14-year-old perspective, these were like high rises to me, no such thing as a building, where I came from, my hometown is like Mayberry, so I find that none of this is true. They had very few black teachers, very few black administrators. It was years before I saw a black doctor anywhere. So moving forward a little bit, I'm here now, still working at the restaurant, but I'm taking classes at National Louis University. So I'm like, I need to get a place of my own. So I start looking around, and everybody I call, people then, as I remember, always used the Evanston Review, and they would have pages and pages of rental property. Everyone I call, oh yeah, then all of a sudden, they disappeared. Somebody just came in and rented them. They're not available anymore. So one summer I came and someone introduced me to this gentleman, a realtor named Dennis Jones.
Well, hold on. You need to sit down, Don?
Okay.
You good? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Dennis Jones, and he was one of the black realtors, that helped particularly African American communities. And I think he felt kind of sorry for me, and he was like, well, don't you want to be around our people? And then he tells me about these rooming houses, I'm like, what is a rooming house? I never heard of one, and it was generally just homes where people were renting a room to people, and you shared the bathroom, you shared the kitchen, and you had a bedroom. So I lived a couple of places on Brown, and then you may have heard the name Louis J. There's 1830 Dodge, right close to Emerson. I lived in that building, because every summer, I got to the point where I just call them up, school will be out May so and so, and I'll be in Evanston this day. Okay, I'll have your room ready for you. So when I decided to live here, I started looking for apartments again. Same kind of thing started happening. So I had the white friend, that I was telling about this and what I thought the problem was. And so she said, okay, we're going to find out, So we make the calls and everything and make appointments to see the places, And sometimes I would go with her, sometimes I didn't, but they thought she was getting the apartment, and they were always available. They were always available. So after about maybe the fifth or sixth time, like we're not renting from any of those realtors, but what we were doing is going to court, And I did, and the realtors will remain nameless, but I did win.
Good for you. Good for you. Are they still in practice, or did they lose their license?
Two of them still operate. One of them does not.
Wow. She shouldn't be operating.
No, they should not be.
Deep. Deep. She's lucky you're a woman of integrity and about business, because
Oh yes. Oh yes.
that you're not revealing her name.
Yeah. One of the other things that I spoke about in a redlining event, I believe someone asked me, how did I get involved with social justice types of activities? And I told them my father, my namesake, Willie Shaw, and I tell people, I'm Willie Jr. If it's social media, they want to call me Mr. anyway when they see Willie, But I said, at that time, we didn't call it social justice. We didn't call it civil rights. We just called it doing right.
Right.
But he just went around the old town talking to people, about what was right and what was wrong. And sometimes things they weren't even aware of that was going on, he would inform them of and make suggestions, encourage them, to get involved, and I just kind of tagged along, or we talked a lot when he was at home, and I just kind of looked up to him, and I always thought, and even to this day, feel that he was just a man before his time. He stood up to everyone, people were frightened, even in the community. Sometimes my siblings were, sometimes my mother was, because they would say it's too outspoken, and you're going to get in trouble, and you're in the South, and, who knows what might happen. Thank God it never did. I don't know why, because he was always out there, always voicing his opinion, always at the schools, always at the community.
That's interesting. What are your thoughts on, because nowadays they will come after you. Back in the day they would lynch an outspoken black person who was fighting for what's right. But now, they pretty much will cut your money, hurt your business, slander your character, dig up whatever they possibly can, even make up stuff, How to handle that?
I think even at that time, they just never did any physical harm to him. My father, I felt, was a trailblazer. He would say to people, if you're going to burn my house down, burn it down. I will rebuild. But I will not live the way I had to live with my family. So he continued to stand firm in that. And he was able to get other people, especially white people in the community, to understand, what he was saying. By the time he was 18 or so, which was considered probably a young adult at that time, because people were getting married, very, very young. He was 17 when he married my mother, so he was able to move from being on a farm, working a farm for white people, not his own farm, to saying that I'm going to save my money, and when I get enough, I'm going to build my own house, and I'm never going to work for you again. He did that, doing little jobs around the town because he was not an educated man. For many years he worked, and then he eventually bought a standard gas station. And we had, black and white patrons that would come. Became very well respected in the city. Became the first black sheriff in that little town. But I think it was because he truly was willing to give his life for what he believed. And I think that most people, if you look back in history with our people, that has been the struggle, and that has unfortunately had to be the decision. That I believe, I know what I'm doing is right, not just for me, but for all people. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I think oftentimes now we are so comfortable physically than we were, 50, 60, 70 years ago. So we're afraid to give up a home. We're afraid to lose a job. We're afraid to not to be able to go to the nail shop. So you have to know what you're willing to stand for, and what it means. I come from a generation of men and women that knew that you don't have to go to the beauty shop, that we knew how to go in the bathroom and wash our hair in the sink. We know that we don't have to have paper towels, that we can use a dish towel and then wash it. We knew how to survive. And it actually concerns me sometimes that generations of all races now, do not know how to survive. I often think about, war-ridden countries, cities and towns that are devastated by hurricanes, or tornadoes, and people just not knowing how to make it. They've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and when you're in this type of business, you have to be willing to give up something and be fine with giving it up, because that's what you want. You know what is right, and you're willing to stand on that at any cost. And I think that's what he did. Fortunately, he lived.
Good. That's an interesting point, Willie, because that's one of the complaints with the black community today, is that we have seen the youth. I mean, they put together Black Lives Matter. I mean, we see them out there marching and everything. But then you do have a generation of the black community who are very comfortable, and they don't want to blow up the apple cart. They don't want to sacrifice, risk anything. They don't want to risk not being invited to the galas and the luncheons and
Yes.
the, you know,
Yes.
things like that. So,
Yes.
but you know that they're angry. You know that they know that there's
Yes,
some
we
things
do.
that aren't right.
Yes.
But then it'll be a Willie Shaw that'll go out there and say, this isn't right. And then you'll find yourself by yourself.
Yes. And
How?
that has happened. That has happened. You know, but again, there were times, most of the time, my father was out there by himself, you know, and, you know, you'd love to have a crowd in terms of encouragement and support, you know, but again, if it's what you believe, if I have to go alone, then I go alone, you know. Progress is much faster, you know, when you can have the support, you know, but it's not absolutely necessary. It just takes much longer, you know. And that is one of the things, you know, it was just 2 weeks ago at our state convention that was held out in Oak Lawn, you know, and that was one of the things that they talked about there is getting people to understand that it's no different than it's always been, that there's power in numbers. Because every community across the United States that has a branch has a respectable number of people in the branch, but they're not mobilized. And that's no different for the Evanston branch. We have a very decent number that are registered, but to mobilize them to be active, you know, in those 5 game changers that we call it. You know, you don't have to be active in all of it. Decide what your interest is. Is it education? Is it economics? Is it criminal justice? You know, and do what you can do.
So, Willie, I know you got things to do. So what would be your message? What would be your message to one, the black and brown community, and then your message to everyone from Willie Shaw?
Yeah, to the black and brown community, I think important thing is not to know who you are and where you came from. That culture is important, and don't give up who you are for someone else. You know, I believe that oftentimes we do become lost because we don't know who we are. We don't know how important we are. We don't know how valuable we are. We don't know where we came from and how important those people, those ancestors before us were. If you don't know, take the time to learn, because we came from amazing stock. You know, we have been here thousands of years, and we will continue to be here because we are strong people. You know, you come from a very strong people, and you can continue to be strong and represent those people. You know, for everybody else, you know, I say what African Americans, what other minorities want is no different than what the white community wants. We want good education for our children. We want the best education for our children. We want decent housing. We want to be able to buy a home. We want to be able to travel, you know, around the country. You know, we want to own businesses. You know, we want to be in positions all across the community, all across the state, whether it's school board, whether it's governor, whether it's president. Our needs are no different than any other human being. We're all human beings, and we all have the same basic needs. We all have the desire for our families to thrive and do well.
And how can people get involved in NAACP? Get
Oh, that is so easy. Oh, well, the first thing you can do is get in contact with Willie Shaw. You know, we have a website. The website is evanstonnAACP.org. We meet once a month, third Tuesday monthly at 2010 Dewey, which is the Family Focus Building. Our membership meetings are at 7:30. The telephone number there is 847-864-0038.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Willie Shaw. Thank you. I feel so honored to be sitting here and talking to you. Thank you.
You are so very welcome anytime.